Welcome to another Survivor Debrief exit interview. And this time we are very, very lucky, very sad, but very lucky to have the last male Brawn standing. Yes, that is right. We are chatting today with Paulie. Paulie, welcome. Thank you very much for coming.
Yeah, thank you for having me. That's right. The last Brawn standing, baby.
Loved your work, my friend. First of all, just going to have a little bit of a chat, and we want to start at the beginning. Could you please, we loved you out there. We saw the highs and the lows of Paulie, but I want to go all the way back to casting. What was your casting journey like? How did it come about?
Well, I'm glad you brought this up because I've been hearing from the fans and stuff, like people have been coming up to me on the street and, celebrating Survivor and things like that. And everyone's like, oh, you're a recruit, right? And I was like, what do you mean? What is this recruit you talk of? But basically, everybody made this assumption that because I was on Ambulance Australia, that I was poached for Survivor, which is actually a little bit inaccurate. So the people who make Ambulance also make Survivor, and I knew this. And so every opportunity I got, I was like, I want to be on Survivor. I want to be on Survivor. I want to be on Survivor. And they were like, okay, all right. So just apply, just do it. And so because I had mentioned it, they had already talked about me being on Survivor, but I still had to go through all of the formalities. So I had to fill out the application form. I had to have a meeting with the casting agent. And then finally I got the call to go and have a meeting with Phoebe and DF. And then from there on, you get the next email, you get the next email, you get the next email, and you're not 100% guaranteed until you get that phone call from DF himself saying, welcome to Survivor. And it's a long, lengthy, stressful journey. So I always say, like, my time on Ambulance Australia was sort of like my audition video, but I definitely had to do all the processes just like everybody else.
That's fun. So you are a fan. So you've seen quite a lot of Survivor. You've watched like the Australian versions, everything. Yep.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I've loved Survivor. I remember watching the first episode, the first season when I was a kid with my family, and it was weekly then. And it was like a huge tradition in my family, and we watched it consistently up until I think the very first American All-Stars. I don't know what season that was.
Season 8,
but then, I grew up then. I turned 20. I wanted to go out and party and travel the world and do things. So Survivor was the furthest thing from my mind. But then, when I sort of settled down and they released the Australian versions, I was on. I was watching all of them. I love them.
That's so great. That's so lovely to hear, my friend. Thank you for sharing that. So going out into the island, what was your strategy? What did you think your strategy would be going out there before the game, going, this is how I want to play? And then how did that compare to how you actually ended up having to play?
Oh, God, dramatic difference. So basically, my strategy going out there was obviously my social game. 100%, I just wanted to depend on who I was as a human being because I can relate very well to people. I can be quite cool and quite charismatic. And so I was using my charm and all of that sort of stuff to just build relationships, genuine relationships. And through those relationships, I wanted to create alliances and strategies amongst a group environment. That changed quite dramatically as we all saw. It started off that way, and then I was just playing survival mode from tribal to tribal to tribal. I was literally playing to survive just one more day because I didn't have any choices. I didn't have any lifelines until Miles came along. But prior, I know, right? My Miles. But prior to that, it was literally whatever I had to do just to make it through this tribal council. And so that meant I had to play my idol. That meant I had to play it against Noonan. And I had to make sure that Noonan went because I still had to play with the OG brains on my tribe. So I had to do a grand gesture to sort of create trust and, hopefully they would have I was hoping they would have seen me as a player that they could work with.
Yeah. And it's interesting you touch on that. And I was going to get to that a bit later, but now you're there. Yeah, that idea of having to go, yep, look, I'll put down Noonan because I want to prove my loyalty and say, look, I can work with you guys moving forward. And the feeling that if you had just used your idol and voted with Noonan, because I don't think anyone expected them to muck up the vote split the way that they did. Like you can't plan for them not to split correctly. So I think that stands where it does. That's all right.
Yeah. Look, it was the best out of a worst situation.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I want to just touch on two things now. What did you think your best move in the game was? And then on the flip side of that, what did you think was your biggest mistake out there?
So I think the best move that I made was probably running. I don't want to use the term running the Brawn camp, but I was a very instrumental player in the OG Brawn tribe.
Mm,
I think when it came to the strategy and the conversations that we really didn't see in the edit, I was very much leading the charge with Noonan about how we were going to implement changes, what we were sort of going to do. There was a time once Nash had gone that we had three people, Kristen, PD, and Ursula, who was sort of lost in the woods.
mm,
And, I was willing to sort of maybe make a move with them. Something
yeah,
we were talking about. I was like, I don't want these three people just to get picked off. That's not sort of the game that I want to play. I want to make interesting moves. So I was in a very nice alliance of six. With Ben, Jesse, Kate, Morgan, myself, and Noonan, and then you had the other three of them. And so I was willing to make a move with them to get them on my side, but unfortunately that didn't make the cut. But one of the moves that I think I'm most proud of
yeah,
was being genuine.
yeah.
Like
Okay.
I
Yep.
I always told the people what I was going to do. Everything I said I was going to do, I did. And even in Noonan's vote out, I did not one time say to her, I'm not writing your name down. I never said that to her because I always wanted to be seen as a player who did what he said he was going to do.
Yeah. And so mistake wise, is there something that particularly was there a
Let
moment
me
or
just
something that you're
go
like,
through the Rolodex. Ooh, gosh, so many. I think the first thing that I wouldn't do is
Mm,
probably speak so much so publicly. I probably
yeah,
wouldn't have done so many public speeches. I probably would have tried to pitch to people more one-on-one on
yep,
the side or groups of two and tried to build a stronger, more personal rapport as opposed to going through a big group environment. Um, I probably would have, gosh, what else did I think that's a mistake?
we
God.
d- we don't have to relive them all, Paulie. That's fine. That
Yeah,
is so
that's
fine,
probably the
mate.
biggest one.
Yeah,
The
that is
biggest one,
so
because I
fine.
think that in a way made me seem a little bit arrogant, a little bit pretentious in a way,
Yeah,
where I
okay.
thought, whereas I think the players that I was playing with appreciated more sneaky, quiet gameplay as opposed
Mm.
to big dramatic gestures.
Yeah. Now you mentioned the early days of Brawn, and I definitely felt like you and Noonan had a good understanding of everything happening there. But do you think because really there was the candy vote when the first vote is always just can go any which way, but then you had the
Yeah,
Nash vote, which was very like a consensus. Do you
yeah.
think that actually put the Brawns at a bit of a disadvantage going into that the rest of the game, not having to sort of do a lot of big votes, not having to build really strong alliances? And it's sort of when you did get to that tribe swap and stuff like that, you guys felt a little bit like behind the eight ball in that regard.
Yeah, I definitely think not going to tribal so much so early on does put a bit of like it puts you into crisis mode when you do have to go because
Mm,
you're scrambling. We did have a conversation about keeping Nash, Noonan and I. We were
yeah.
like, well, he's causing a lot of drama. Everybody wants him out. He'd be a great shield.
Mm,
Is there any sort of possible way that we could switch the vote? But there wasn't much we could do. Everybody else was very gung ho for
yeah.
Nash.
Yeah.
And then you can think about it and you can talk about it, but then that creates paranoia as well because you're like, okay, if I do this, then everybody's going to be mad at me. Then I'm going to be an even bigger target. And then would I become the next one to go? So I think for tribe morale
Mm,
and just for moving forward as a unit, Nash had to go. We really didn't have a choice.
yeah. That's all good. Um,
Mm.
well, yeah, we love Nash. What
Yeah.
surprised what surprised you the most out there? Obviously, being a fan and finally getting on the show. Was there something
Mm.
out there that you were like, oh wow, I didn't expect this or anything like that?
I didn't expect it to be as hard as it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, like that was really, really surprising to me on how taxing it is on your body, your mind, and your soul. Because you're basically building a society, you're building a family, you're actually building a home with these people. Do you know what I mean? So, well, you
Mm,
do know what I
I
mean.
do.
So, yeah. So when you do that, it really does become your life. So
Mm.
then when you're struggling, like you're going through that hunger phase and you're going through the transition of like sleeping outside on the ground. I've never slept outside on the ground before.
Mm.
So it was really challenging to climatize. And I think it took about a week for my body to be like, okay, so this is how you're getting fed now. We're okay.
Mm.
And after that week, I started to flourish in the environment. And then the game had other ideas, of course.
Yeah, of
But
course.
but I got comfortable with the environment. But as you go on and on and on, it gets harder and harder and harder because you get hungrier, you get more sad, you get more emotional, you get more invested. And then for me, I was fighting, every single
Every day,
day
yeah.
from day 18 onwards, I was fighting. And so that just put a big toll on my mental well-being, my physical health. My hair started falling out. I
Oh,
couldn't sleep properly. Like it was really, really hard.
poor thing. I know. And it is amazing. Like everything is harder out there. Everything is heavier. Everything is more
Mm.
extreme. And it really does weigh you down. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty brutal. But I can just say, like, this is going to sound really bad, but the sad, poorly editing was amazing. Like, honestly, you got to embrace it. The
Oh, of course.
the confessional that was just a sigh at one point. It was just you going, and then they cut it, like
Yeah.
stuff like that, being wet. And then you cop the torch to the head. It was
Oh,
very. I know it's brutal when you're out there,
yeah.
but just
Hmm.
from a fan perspective and watching that, oh my god,
Yeah.
it was great. It was great television,
Yeah.
Lee. It was really fun.
And you know what? I wouldn't change a thing
Yeah,
because if I'm going to suffer, I don't want to suffer in silence. I
yeah,
want every single person who's watching or even living this experience with me to see how bad it was and to how much I suffered. But then what I learned about myself out of that is next level.
yeah.
You don't really know how resilient you are, how much you can tolerate until you're tested. And we're not tested in our day-to-day lives.
No.
We're surrounded by people who love us, support us. We've
Mm,
got our houses, we've got our friends, we've got all of the things. But out there, all you have is nothing.
yeah,
You've got the environment, and you've got the
yeah,
game. That's
yeah.
it.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
and so like to go through all of that and to walk out with a smile on my face,
Yeah,
brilliant.
it's very good, mate.
Absolutely brilliant.
And I
Yeah.
love it that you brought you kept the Mo alive out there. I think
Oh,
that was
yeah.
fantastic.
This is
I
my
was very
COVID
happy.
mode.
Yeah,
Yes,
dude, it's
so
mine
from
too.
work.
Yeah, it's mine
Yes,
too.
brilliant.
Yeah,
We weren't allowed to have beards for our masks, but we could have mustaches. So we were all
yes.
like, well, let's go on the mustache train. And then I started getting the Freddie Mercury comparisons, and I'm like,
Oh,
sold. This
okay.
is my new life now.
COVID, I stopped shaving and I was like, you know what? I could probably pull this off for a while. And now
Yeah.
all my wedding photos over a mustache, or like my baby
Stunning.
Phoenix only knows me with a mustache, all
Stunning.
this sort of stuff. It's very good.
Yeah.
Now I know you're going to hate hearing this because we've all heard it a million times out there. Snake oil salesman. Now, this was one of the most overused lines besides Bomb Squad. Snake oil
Yeah.
salesman was right up there with a lot of it.
Yes.
It's so hard to change people's perception of you in that game.
Yes.
And who is responsible for that? Who do you think manufactured that and put that out into the world? Because honestly, there was one moment, I think it's at Merge, where Laura went to Karen and said, "Hey, I'm sort of liking Paulie. He's pretty
Yeah.
fun. What's his deal?" And then Karen was instantly, "Oh no, he's a snake oil salesman. We all know that.
Yeah.
Don't trust him." So where did this come from? Talk it out. Who's responsible for it, and how hard was that in the game?
So we have my beautiful friend AJ to thank for that.
Oh,
So AJ is a brilliant man. He's a great player, and he's very switched on. Like it's no surprise that he's good at poker. He recognized me from the get-go. He saw what my strengths were, not only as a game player, but as a human being. He saw that straight away, and he knew that I was playing into that and depending on it, which is my name, which is my reputation, my ability to form really tight bonds with everybody. He recognized that as a massive threat. And he recognized that I was a challenge beast as well. So the only way that he could take that away from me was to drag my name through the mud. And that's exactly what he did. And it worked. To his credit, he fanned that flame so hard to anybody that would listen and so often that they started believing it. Even my allies started to believe it and they all jumped ship. because they were like, oh, well, yeah, if Paul couldn't vote out Noonan, then he must be a snake oil salesman. But they didn't see that as a move. They didn't see that as a grand
Mm,
gesture. They saw it as an attack on
yeah.
Noonan, which it wasn't. It was a strategic move. I'm going to vote Noonan so I can join you on the Brain Tribe. And in doing so, I disarmed AJ in a way by making him play his idol. But
Yeah.
nobody recognized that. And I understand why nobody was willing to jump ship, because it's so much easier to believe the negative in somebody when you're having a hard time yourself. When you're going through all of that and someone's telling you something, you're going to believe it because it's easy to do so.
Yeah.
So
And yeah, that person controls the narrative and it gets away from you. And then it's so hard to get back and to shift it. Like it's so
literally.
hard. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think maybe if the term came from somebody else, it might not have caught on so much. But
Stuck. Yeah.
because AJ was such an instrumental player in everybody's games, they're
Mm,
going to believe it. And
yeah.
it just kept going on and on and on, just like a snowball. It just blew up. And I was in crisis management mode and I just couldn't get out of it.
Yeah. And is that maybe why? Because every time there was a vote and you just got through, I was like, okay, Paulie's going to reset now. He's going to get his feet under him. And you just, after every vote that you got through, you just couldn't get that ground. Even after Miles saved you, the next shot
Mhm.
was him going like, oh, well, I don't really need Paulie to hang around for very
Yeah,
long. I just felt you could never get that traction from that. And I think that
literally.
came back to that snake oil salesman, that sort of banning your reputation out there, which is
It
brutal, my
did.
friend.
Yeah, it
Um,
was rough.
Now, can I just say,
Mhm.
the vote out that you had with 5 people being immune, that's a tough ask. It limited the options. It made it really tough.
Yeah.
Is there anything in that tribal that you felt that you could have tried, or anything else that you could have done, or do you really feel like, hey, I put it all out there, I tried my hardest, and it just didn't come together?
You know what, babes? I'll be 100% honest with you here. I tried, but I was trying from the wrong avenue because my soul died on the Baron tribe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Wow. Yeah.
to go through that storm, and then, like, we were literally standing out there in the rain. It was an awful experience. Awful, awful. And then to have no food for 36 hours, like you saw, I couldn't even form a sentence on the mat. Like there was just
Yeah.
no chance. I was completely destroyed. And then to hang on to that pole for as long as I did, and then watch everybody else just walk on down, like, oh well, no, 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 no,
Yeah.
no, no, no.
Yeah.
And I had to hang on because I'm always on the line. By the time we got back to tribal, by the time we got back to camp, sorry, I couldn't think of anything else. I couldn't think
Mm.
of a strategic move to try to save myself. All I had was me to pitch. And that's why I came across looking like a madman, because I was like, how can this be happening again?
Yeah.
I've got allies now. I've got Miles. I've been saved in the last vote. Like we voted out Laura. Like, how am I back in this spot again? Like, come on. So I feel like there's probably more that I could have done had I been fed with a breakfast,
Yeah.
started at the top of the pole,
Yeah, yeah,
for
all of that
sure.
stuff. But and you
Yeah.
say that as well, and same thing. My brain got slower, strategy wise out there. When you don't eat,
Yeah.
it just does slow down. And like you on that pole was brilliant. The emotion,
Ah.
the pure mental energy. You had way bigger
Oh,
feet than the other guys. That was just amazing and such a huge
yeah.
effort. But like that was
Oh,
pretty. It was pretty
thank you so
incredible.
much. It was hard. And I remember when we were walking back, like I was limping because I put that big hole in my foot. I put a big
Yeah,
blister in my foot.
yeah,
And so we were limping off the mat. And then as soon as like we got back, I just started crying. And I was just like, oh my God, it's too much. And then you snap out of it and you're like, okay, I've got
yeah.
to save
What do I do?
myself.
What do
How
I
am I
do?
going to do this? What am I going to do?
Now we've just got a couple of minutes left now, so just a few really
Mm,
quick questions.
yeah.
Who do you think's playing the best game right now?
Oh, I think the best game is very obviously being played by Miles. Like the fact that he has done what he has done from the position he's been in every tribe, every camp, he's just thriving from the bottom. And I know how hard that is. And so I
Yeah,
just think he's playing the best game. I take my hat off to him, and I just want to see him flourish. Like I
yeah.
think he's doing amazingly.
Um, why is no one talking about Kalen? If like he's won 3 immunities now, and no one's talking about him. It's really weird. It's really weird.
Nobody's talking about Kalen because he does all the hard work that nobody wants to do. Do you know
Yeah.
how
Okay.
hard it is to open those coconuts? He opens at least 7 coconuts a day. And like when we were doing the Baron Bounty vote,
Yeah.
like where I got out,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought, oh, I could pitch Kalen to everybody, but then I thought, oh, who's going to open the coconuts? Nah, believe me,
There we go.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Was there anything in that didn't make the edit that you wanted to share with the fans?
Um, I think the relationship that I had with all the brains didn't really go to air. So like we had a nice relationship. We did have conversations. We did speak. We did have like a cute friendship. And so that really wasn't aired. There wasn't so much of a villain bully sort of vibe. It was very peaceful. It was very wholesome. Which is why sometimes I got upset with the vote because it was so nice to me at certain points,
And
but they
then,
just kept targeting me.
oh. Now
Yeah.
it sounds like you took a lot away from the experience. You find your resilience inside. We've absolutely loved watching you play out there. You were so fantastic. Just one final question: being a film nerd, what is your favorite film, Paulie?
Oh, well, I was gonna say Interstellar, but
Then-
Laura already
yeah,
stole
Laura
that.
took it.
Yeah. Look, I'm a huge Christopher Nolan fan, so I
Same.
love the Dark Knight trilogy. I love his early work like Memento,
Oh, dude, I
phenomenal.
love Memento.
Same, phenomenal. But then I also love like anything Quentin Tarantino. So Kill Bill, love. James Cameron, love. So Titanic, the Avatar movies, love, love. Even like True Lies, phenomenal.
Yeah,
Love.
True Light's so good.
Yeah,
And
so good.
as a film fan, I did
Mhm.
appreciate your Titanic reference out there, your Jack Rose reference. It was very. I
Yes.
was like, tick.
Yeah, we had a lot. Me and Noonan we were calling each other Thelma and Louise. You know, we had a lot. We would reference ourselves to movies all the time.
Oh, that is so good, mate. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're a very busy man, but we loved watching you
Right.
out there. You from your crucifix challenge out there, you looked amazing, and
Thank
we were
you.
all along for the ride with you. So thank you so much. Looking forward to speaking to you again down the road. Thanks very much, Paulie. See you, buddy.
Thank you. Mwah. Thanks so much.